You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, walking through the ruins of this massive, heavily fortified library.
Oh, like an ancient historical archive or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. And the architecture is just imposing. You can tell just by looking at it that this place held the foundational texts of an entire civilization.
Right.
So you walk down these grand corridors, you approach the main archive, and you reach out to grab a volume, right? Because you finally want to understand what this society was actually building.
Naturally.
But as you pull it from the shelf, you realize there are no pages.
Wait, really? No pages at all?
None. You only have the little spine labels. The books themselves have been completely wiped clean from the servers.
Wow.
You have a title, you have a heavily stylized icon next to it, maybe a generic category tag, but the actual substance, the text, is just entirely vaporized.
I mean, that creates a fascinating analytical constraint, doesn't it? You're basically left holding the packaging of the knowledge. The marketing of the knowledge, really. But the primary source itself is totally inaccessible. You sort of have to reverse engineer the entire civilization based solely on how it indexed its information.
And that is the exact constraint we are operating under today. Welcome to a highly unusual deep dive. Because today, we are not parsing through a stack of comprehensive white papers or, heavily vetted research articles.
No, you definitely are not.
Our source material consists of 5 incredibly specific, fragmented snapshots of the tech world.
Very fragmented.
We have headlines pointing to billions of dollars in infrastructure, updates on multimodal AI models, dramatic corporate restructurings. But every single one of these snapshots leads us to the exact same dead end.
The dreaded 404 error.
Yes, a literal web page reading, sorry, the page you're looking for doesn't exist.
We are essentially staring at a curated collection of digital 404 error pages. But, well, the curation itself is the story here.
Right, because there's this overarching wrapper around all of these missing links. These titles are being blasted out by a platform that promises, and I'm quoting here, the most interesting stories in startups, tech, and programming delivered in a free daily email.
And they have a massive reach, too.
Huge. They aren't just tossing this into the void. They are actively commanding their audience to join 1,600,000 readers. We are looking at a daily broadcast hitting a demographic the size of a major metropolitan city.
Which is wild, because that scale, it completely alters the nature of the information. When you have a massive audience waking up every single day expecting to be fed interesting stories about startups and programming, well, the publisher has to feed the beast.
Yeah, they have to hit send.
Exactly. Regardless of whether genuine paradigm-shifting news actually occurred that morning.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to basically act as digital archaeologists. We cannot read these articles.
The pages are gone.
The pages are gone. But we are going to analyze the ghosts of these missing documents. We're going to scrutinize the remaining headlines, the specific lexical choices, and the highly deliberate emojis attached to them.
It's all about the metadata.
Right. We need to see if we can map the massive velocity of this AI landscape and the relentless appetite of that massive readership using literally nothing but the metadata left behind.
And the metadata is arguably more revealing than whatever, PR sanitized text was originally on those pages anyway.
Oh, for sure.
The way an industry labels its daily updates, the semiotic shorthand it uses to compress highly technical infrastructure into consumer-friendly icons, the sheer volume of updates it weaponizes to maintain engagement. That structure forces us to look at the economic engine driving the sector, rather than getting bogged down in the minutiae of a single product launch.
So let's start that structural analysis by looking at the foundation, because in the tech space, the foundation is always the capital allocation.
Always follow the money.
Always. And the very first fragments we pull from this wreckage establish a massive, almost incomprehensible industrial base. Listen to the phrasing and the iconography here.
Okay.
We've got Nvidia invests $40, followed by a money bag emoji.
Mm-hmm.
Then Anthropic CFO interview, also tagged with a money bag. Anthropic acquires compute, paired with a handshake. Mistral's growth, featuring a chart pointing up and to the right. And finally, Claude Small Business, stamped with a little briefcase emoji.
What's fascinating here is that it looks like a traditional financial ledger, but the currency and the assets being traded represent a complete departure from how software companies operated a decade ago.
It's disorienting, honestly. It's like finding the ledger for a skyscraper project but having absolutely no blueprints.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, we see Nvidia invest $40 billion is sovereign wealth fund territory.
It's a staggering amount of capital.
But without the article, we just have the receipt. And it makes me question the core premise of this daily newsletter. They promise the most interesting stories in programming and tech. But looking at these specific fragments, is the real tech news for this audience actually just high-stakes, ruthless corporate finance?
It really makes you wonder.
I mean, the recurring money bag emojis make this feel less like a developer update and way more like Wall Street in a hoodie.
It resembles Wall Street, certainly, but the underlying mechanics are entirely different. Wall Street traditionally trades capital for equity or capital for debt. But these AI companies, they're trading capital for physics.
Physics?
Yeah, look at the phrase immediately following the Anthropic CFO interview. Anthropic acquires compute, finalized with a handshake emoji. In a traditional software-as-a-service model, a company might acquire a competitor or license a proprietary algorithm, or maybe hire a massive engineering team.
Right, normal tech stuff.
But here, they are acquiring compute. They are using astronomical sums of capital to secure exclusive rights to the raw processing power housed in server farms.
Shaking hands over compute. I mean, you aren't shaking hands over a finished software product there. You are locking in a contract for the right to push electricity through millions of silicon processors in a data center.
Exactly. The compute is the bottleneck of the entire industry right now. That $40 billion investment from Nvidia isn't just cash changing hands. In this ecosystem, capital is often a strategic mechanism to ensure that the compute pipeline remains tightly controlled.
Wow.
The finance is the strict prerequisite for the programming. You literally cannot train the models without securing the infrastructure first.
So the narrative of startups in tech is basically indistinguishable from the narrative of industrial scale finance at this point.
Pretty much. The upward growth chart next to Mistral, or the small business deployment of Claude, all of that is entirely downstream of that initial handshake over processing power.
Because the capital is just the raw material. It is the steel and concrete required before a single developer can actually write anything meaningful.
That's right.
Which forces us to look at what happens once that infrastructure is actually secured. If the billions of dollars and the massive compute clusters are the foundation, what is the output?
Well, the next set of metadata fragments we have paints a picture of a hyper-aggressive, almost frantic continuous deployment cycle.
We move from the acquisition of processing power to the relentless utilization of it.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the naming conventions in these product updates are incredibly strange.
Oh, they're bizarre.
We have Opus 4.7 Fast paired with a lightning bolt emoji, Queen Image 2.0 with a framed picture, Gemini Omni surfaces alongside a movie camera emoji. We have codex customizations and interaction models, both tagged with little robot faces. And then, completely shifting the tone, we have serverless GPUs accompanied by these magical sparkle emojis.
The sparkle's my favorite.
It's so weird. Let's isolate Opus 4.7 Fast with the lightning bolt. That hyper-specific numbering is just jarring. It isn't a major 4.0 release, nor is it a massive 5.0 paradigm shift. It is a fractional 4.7 update.
Right.
And it is explicitly branded as fast. Are we witnessing genuine substantive leaps in capability here? Or is this industry just weaponizing version numbers to manufacture a sense of relentless momentum for an audience that expects daily news?
I think it is a structural necessity masquerading as momentum.
How so?
Well, in traditional software, you shipped a master version on a disk every 2 years. Now, with cloud architecture and highly competitive AI labs, deployment is continuous. But when you are competing for the attention of a massive daily readership like those 1.6 million people, an incremental stability update doesn't generate clicks.
Nobody is opening an email for an incremental stability update.
Exactly. But appending fast and adding a lightning bolt, that turns a minor latency improvement into an event. It gamifies the development cycle.
But pushing that cycle requires fundamentally altering what the software actually is, doesn't it? If we look at the emojis tied to Quen and Gemini, the framed picture, the movie camera, it proves this continuous deployment is rapidly breaching the boundaries of just text.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the shift from large language models to multimodal systems is fully encoded in those few words.
Right.
Words like omning surfaces and image 2.0 indicate that the compute they acquired in the first phase is being directed toward processing visual and temporal data. It is a massive leap in required bandwidth.
And the only way an ecosystem can support millions of developers interacting with video and image models at 4.7 fast speeds is through the architectural shift hinted at by that last phrase we saw.
Serverless GPUs.
With the magic sparkles. It's such a brilliant, almost deceptive piece of UX design. They are taking the most heavy industrial component of the tech world and branding it like fairy dust.
When developers see serverless GPU, they aren't meant to think about the physical reality. I mean, a graphics processing unit running AI models is a massive piece of hardware. It requires industrial cooling systems, specialized server racks, staggering amounts of electricity.
It's a loud, hot factory.
Yes. But serverless abstracts all of that away. It means the back-end provider is dynamically slicing up the physical GPU compute into milliseconds and routing it to whoever needs it instantly via an API.
So the developer never touches a server.
Never. They just ping the endpoint. The sparkle emoji is semiotic camouflage. It hides the ruthless, heavy industrial reality of data centers behind a consumer-friendly, frictionless abstraction layer.
Semiotic camouflage, I love that. They are essentially turning raw infrastructure into an invisible utility. You flip the switch, the magic sparkles happen, and your multimodal interaction model just works.
Exactly.
But that level of abstraction and that lightning bolt speed of deployment creates a massive contradiction. You cannot run an entire industry at this velocity without putting immense stress on the people actually maintaining the systems.
Oh, absolutely. The friction of continuous deployment eventually degrades the organizational structure. The abstraction layer hides the servers, sure, but it cannot hide the human capital required to sustain that pace.
Which brings us to the third piece of this digital archaeology. The metadata clearly shows the human friction.
It really does.
We have a set of headlines that specifically map the personnel dynamics of this ecosystem. We see Grok Build, accompanied by an emoji of a man working at a laptop. We have SpaceX AI paired with a rocket ship. We see AI adoption data marked by a bar chart.
All very positive, upward trending symbols.
Right. But squarely in the middle of this aggressive building and launching, we have the phrase XAI Exodus. And the emoji they appended to it is a waving hand. Just a casual wave goodbye to a mass departure of talent.
It is the starkest contrast in the entire data set, I think. You have the rocket ship of deployment right up against the mass departure of the engineers.
So what does this all mean? Look at the forces at play here. The rapid adoption data, the relentless building, the exoduses. It feels less like a traditional corporate ladder and much more like a centrifuge.
The centrifuge, I like that.
Yeah, because the sheer velocity of iterating at 4.7 fast speeds, powered by billions of dollars in acquired compute, creates extreme organizational G-force.
Right, it's spinning incredibly fast.
The adoption numbers and the Claude small business deployments get pushed outward to the public. But the human builders at the center, the little emoji guy at the laptop, either adapt to the crushing pressure of the centrifuge or they get violently thrown out of the system.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally view tech labor in the AI era. We tend to view an exodus as a failure of management, or maybe a temporary crisis.
Usually, yeah.
But if we look at the metadata, the transition from Grok Build to an XAI exodus isn't a glitch in the system. It is the natural, expected byproduct of an industry operating under these specific physical and financial constraints. The centrifuge is working exactly as designed.
Because the burnout is a structural requirement.
Precisely. But look at how that structural burnout is packaged for the audience.
The waving hand.
Yes. The waving hand emoji turns a mass resignation, which involves severe professional and technical disruption, into a casual spectator sport. The startups, tech, and programming world isn't just a place where tools are built anymore. It is a highly volatile soap opera.
That makes so much sense. The engineers are furiously building, burning out, departing, and immediately getting absorbed by another competitor armed with a fraction of that $40 billion we discussed earlier.
And the audience is watching it all happen in real time. That massive readership isn't just opening their daily email to find a new serverless API for their workflow. They're consuming the drama of the exodus just as eagerly as they are consuming the adoption data.
They want the rocket ships, but they also want the drama of the waving hand.
The gamification of the news is necessary to maintain the attention of a demographic that large. When you have a daily obligation to 1.6 million inboxes, The technical milestones, the 4.7 updates, the interaction models, they must be interwoven with the human volatility to keep the narrative compelling.
So the money bags, the rockets, the waving hands.
It is a carefully calibrated UX strategy to make heavy infrastructure and corporate turnover feel like an accessible, unfolding narrative.
And the ultimate irony, really the punchline to this entire archaeological dig, is that the narrative didn't even need the underlying text to survive.
Not at all.
The pages for the $40 billion investment, the serverless GPUs, the XAI exodus, they all returned a 404 error. The page you're looking for doesn't exist.
But the ecosystem didn't collapse.
Exactly. The daily email was still dispatched, the headlines were parsed, the emojis triggered the requisite engagement, and the demand of the readership was met.
The structural container proved more resilient than the content it was designed to hold. The metadata successfully transmitted the entire economic and technological vector of the industry without requiring a single paragraph of actual reporting.
It's kind of mind-blowing. We pulled 3 massive insights from the ghosts of these missing pages. We mapped an industry where unprecedented capital is strictly deployed to monopolize raw compute.
Right?
We saw how that processing power drives a frantic, multimodal iteration cycle that masks heavy industrial infrastructure behind serverless magical thinking.
With the sparkle.
With the sparkles. And finally, we identified the human centrifuge at the center of it all, where burnout and volatility are packaged as daily entertainment for the masses. It is a complete architectural blueprint of the current tech landscape, decoded entirely from the spine labels of empty books.
It really demonstrates that in an era characterized by overwhelming information velocity, understanding the structural incentives, who is buying the compute, how they are abstracting the hardware, and how they are packaging the human toll is far more valuable than reading every press release.
And for you, listening right now and navigating this constant barrage of tech updates, that is the core takeaway. Every day, your feeds are flooded with lightning bolts, money bags, and rocket ships.
It never stops.
And the pressure to keep up, to read every single 5,000-word deep dive into the latest fractional model update, it can feel totally paralyzing.
Oh, absolutely.
But you don't always need the full text to see the vector. If you step back and analyze the semiotics, the specific vocabulary of speed, the financial framing of infrastructure, and the sheer scale of the crowd gathered to watch, the trajectory of the industry reveals itself.
You observe the mechanics of the centrifuge rather than getting dizzy watching the individual pieces fly off.
Exactly. And that leaves us with one final lingering thread to pull. Think about the daily ritual of that massive readership. Every single morning, 1.6 million people open their inboxes, anticipating the next iteration, the next funding round, the next dramatic exit. But as we saw clearly today, sometimes the pages themselves simply don't exist. The link is broken, the article is vapor. But if the headline and the emoji are enough to trigger the dopamine to satisfy the daily craving for momentum, how much of our understanding of the tech industry is shaped purely by the anticipation of progress rather than the reality of the technology itself?
Spoken Tech for your ears.